crisis of character. A White House Secret Service officer discloses his firsthand experience with Hillary, Bill, and how they operate. Gary Byrne details what the Clintons are like, far away from the public eye. Now, he has a lot to share, so let's get things started. Joining us now on an exclusive is former Secret Service officer Gary Byrne. How are you? Good to see you, sir.
Thank you, Sean.
You wanted to be a Secret Service officer your whole life.
I did.
Yeah,
I did.
And you got that coveted job right in front of the Oval Office.
I did. It came true. Yeah, it was great.
Pretty amazing. I know that the left is going to smear, slander, besmirch you. You're ready for that, right?
Sure, I am. And it's already started.
It's already started.
Yeah.
Before the book comes out. You know, I love how they smear you before they even know what you wrote.
Yeah.
I'm going to start at the end of the book, because you talk about why you wrote this book. You said, what I learned from the Clintons firsthand the hard way is important. In 2016, she's running again, and you felt compelled to tell the story because why? Let me ask that.
Because I want Americans to know what the real Clinton administration is like. Mrs. Clinton is not a leader. She's a very, very angry person all the time. I've seen many instances that I talk about in my book, Crisis of Character, where she displays this holier-than-thou attitude, do as I say, not as I do. She's a dictator. She comes across as a dictator. I've seen her berate many people, and myself included. And I've never seen any example that would lead me to believe that she could lead this country. I mean,
you know, you describe a woman that is very phony. In other words, you talk about how she'd tell you to go to hell, or tell another agent to go blank himself.
Correct.
And how she threw a Bible at a Secret Service officer or agent.
Agent.
Right?
Yes, sir.
Okay, and the vase story, which we'll get to in a minute.
Right.
But if the cameras were on, she was close to Bill, but it was manufactured. It was not real.
Absolutely.
Camera goes off, different person.
Yeah.
And if she had guessed, she'd say, oh, he's my favorite Secret Service guy.
Sure. She actually did that to me one time when she berated me about an hour before over something, and then introduced me to this tour from Arkansas, a group of people that were getting a special tour, and told them what a wonderful, I was her favorite officer, and patted me on the back, and almost to the point where, like, I almost believed her, but I knew what the truth was. Yeah. I'd seen this behavior before.
You said, and with Hillary Clinton's latest rise, I realized her own leadership style, volcanic, impulsive, enabled by sycophants, disdainful of the rules set for everyone else, has not changed a bit. A lot has been made about temperament. Yes. And the temperament of a president.
Yes.
You're describing someone by far that does not have control of her emotions or temperament. Yeah.
She exhibits some very dangerous behavior, as I would describe it. She gets angry at things that are policy issues that, you know, take time to fix, and she's got this attitude where she wants things fixed right now, immediately. She screams and yells at people, and there's procedures. You know, government is very bogged down with rules and regulations, and so yeah, there's many examples that I cite in my book where she blows up at people. Like I said, she's blown up at me before, and agents and her staff. At one time, I saw her staff so afraid to tell her about a mistake that was made. They weren't upset about the waste of the mistake, ordering the wrong invitations. They were terrified that someone was going to have to tell Hillary Clinton that there was a mistake made.
Oh, by the way, you're not the only one to say this. George Stephanopoulos, he described her as having a horrible temper. Dee Dee Myers is another person. Yeah. And you even quoted George, I know, in the book.
Yes.
And then you write, though portrayed as a long-suffering spouse of an unfaithful husband whose infidelities I personally observed, and we'll get to that in a minute, and know to be true, she was anything but a sympathetic victim. Correct.
Their relationship seemed so strange and volatile at times, and she would continuously berate people, as I mentioned before, but she was like two different people. Again, she would be polite and nice to everybody when the cameras were on, and then when they were off, she was just cold, distant.
Seconds later.
Just almost instantly. I mean, that's what I've experienced quite a few times.
Yeah. All right, you tell a couple of stories, and I think our audience would want to hear them.
Sure.
One story is the vase story.
Sure.
The other story is the blue glove story.
Right.
And I think they give some insight into what you saw on a regular basis.
Sure. So the vase story is, I came in one morning to go to work early, came in, worked out, and then as I headed over to the post, I ran into residence workers that were going home, and they said, "Oh, you better go over and see your buddy. We had a problem last night." So I went over to the mansion post on the ground floor, and I said, "What's going on?" And I heard something happen. They said, Mr. and Mrs. Clinton had this horrendous fight. It was so loud that the staff people on the ground had walked away, from the elevator shaft. The sound was coming down, and then they heard a crash. And then when it was investigated, they saw a broken vase on the floor. Now, this has been reported to be not true, and they reported it that a lamp was thrown. Well, a lamp wasn't thrown, a vase was.
Now, the vase was on one side of the room,
right,
and broken on the other side of the room.
Right. The vase was sat on a long oblong table that was in the
so it didn't
living
fall.
quarters. Yeah, I doubt it.
Yeah.
So it looked like it had been launched and it was shattered. And then the reason I know this is true is because when I heard the story, after I heard it, having worked at the White House and know how the White House works, I knew if something like that had happened where the debris would be. So I walked down to the curator's office and looked inside the curator's office, and there was a cardboard box with the mostly blue and some white on it, vase.
Yeah.
So I knew it was true.
Yeah. Tell us a story about the blue glove.
So the blue glove incident.
You're talking about like medical gloves.
Right. The uniform division officers are required to wear these gloves, and
for everybody.
Yeah, when you're searching people.
Right.
And Congressman Barney Frank came in with some representatives, and as they were putting the gloves on, and Congressman Frank asked why they were wearing the gloves, and he said, the officer said, why do you think? And so they felt like the uniform division was being rude to them. So when they got into the mansion, they started complaining about it. And when it got to Mrs. Clinton, she pretty much came unglued. I actually got phone calls from my coworkers over there who told me the story and said she was on her way over to the Oval Office, that she was furious.
You tell that it ended up that she literally went down to the Oval Office to see Bill Clinton.
Yes.
Wanting all the agents fired.
All the uniform division officers.
All the uniform division officers fired.
Yes.
They were always against us from the beginning because they had worked for former President George H.W. Bush. Right.
She was paranoid about us, and for no reason. I know it sounds silly for me to say this now because I'm talking about it, but we're incredibly loyal to them. And many times, as I detail in my book, Curses of Character, I tried to help them. I tried to do the right thing for them and hide some of this stuff, but you couldn't help them. It's this perpetual scandal, one after the other. It's like you can't help them help themselves.
Yeah. And this temper issue of hers was not uncommon. This was a regular, you described somebody that has almost on a daily basis.
Sure. Maybe a daily basis, not so much, but certainly a lot. I saw it so much that I became numb to it almost. And I always go back to what I was told by a sheriff from Arkansas one time. And we were debating whether they would get elected. This is before they started running. I was down there on a protection detail for former President George Herbert Walker Bush. And the guy said, "Let me tell you something about these people, Gary. I've known them for years. Everything you hear about them's true, and if they run for office, they'll get elected, and they'll be there for 8 years."
Yeah.
And he wasn't just. I mean, he was serious as a heart attack. He almost looked right through me, and he knew these people deep, well.
Yeah.
So it's just the same thing that we heard about in Arkansas. All these rumors, it became true at the White House.
And would these fights be something common knowledge? Everybody knew there was a lot of fighting. Look, I know
we did a pretty good job of hiding it. We helped them hide it. That's our job in this Secret Service.
You helped them also hide his infidelity.
Well, yeah, I did. I mean, I did. At one time when the Navy steward came and was complaining to me near the Oval Office that he had found these towels that were stained with lipstick and other and some fluids, that he was concerned and that he was tired of cleaning up after the president's affair. And in one particular case, I actually took the towels from him, Sean, and put them in a plastic bag, and I destroyed them.
I want to get back to that in a second here, but you describe her as dangerous, abusive, and paranoid.
Yes. Yes, one of the first things when they first came to the White House, about 2 years before they got there, the Bush administration put in this brand new state-of-the-art telephone system. Well, when they came in, they wanted to change because they thought the Bush administration...
Bushes bugged them?
Right.
Yeah, that's kind of paranoid.
Yeah, and it sounds so crazy when you think about it. And so they went and had the phone system changed and they didn't know it cost money. They actually didn't have the money to pay for it at the time.
Before I get into all the issues involving Bill and her and what she knew or didn't know and covering up and lying and you being put in the middle of all this, people use drugs at the White House?
Yeah, there were some issues. One of the ones I comment in my book, and I'm very careful not to tell too much about it because I don't want, hopefully this person got on with their lives and live a healthy life. But there was this one particular staff member that they'd come in the morning and they'd be so beat up and exhausted looking, worn out, exhausted, and to the point where they couldn't even say good morning. And they'd go in their office and then they'd go into the bathroom and they'd come out of the bathroom completely elevated and happy and smiling, and
it was obvious you thought coke was being used.
I did, and then later on I was told that this particular person actually they did it like something similar to an intervention and got her help and got her to a clinic, and I never did see her again, but I understand she did all right. So.
Okay. Welcome back to Hannity's Show. Earlier this month, when details from Gary Byrne's tell-all book began coming out, well, the Clinton campaign, they went on the offensive, releasing a short statement saying, quote, Gary Byrne joins the ranks of Ed Klein and other authors in this latest in a long line of books attempting to cash in on the election cycle with their nonsense. Now, it should be put in the fantasy section of the bookstore. We continue now with the author of the book. Crisis of Character, a White House Secret Service officer discloses his firsthand experience with Hillary, Bill, and how they operate. Former Secret Service officer Gary Byrne, 30 years of service, your book isn't even out, and they smear you.
Yes.
So now that it's out, I guess they'll really start smearing you.
Yes, I believe that is going to happen.
Is that you tell those stories, go to hell, she would say to officers, go F yourself.
Yes.
Throwing a Bible at an officer.
And an agent, yeah.
And even you're saying you lashing out at many agents.
Sure, and officers.
And now trying to smear a 30-year stellar reputation.
Yeah.
What's your reaction to that?
Well, my reaction is I'm an Air Force veteran. I spent 25 years in the federal law enforcement protecting them, and I realized they're bent out of shape about me coming out and telling the truth, but it is the truth. It's the story of my life, and they just happen to intersect it. And as I mentioned before, the reason I'm doing it...
So you expected this?
I did. I'm prepared for it.
Yeah.
I don't like it, but it is what it is. And when I decided to come forward and tell my story, I knew I'd be
You expected it because you know them.
I do. I know them well.
You said she berated, meaning Hillary, Vince Foster till he could stand no more.
Right.
That implies that she drove him. In part.
Nobody knows why somebody takes their own life. But I can tell you, when I met Vince Foster in the White House and I saw him walk around, I never saw anybody that didn't want to be there more than he didn't want to be there. He looked so uncomfortable. And there were many incidences or stories where the staff would hear her berating Vince, and she blamed him publicly for some of the things that they didn't get done. And as a lot of people know, in his suicide note, he basically said that that Washington D.C. was this terrible, vindictive place, and it was one of the reasons he took his own life. Yeah. I mean, it's a terrible thing. I didn't know him well, but I was very sad when he did take his life, but I was not surprised.
You found Bill Clinton, in spite of all his infidelities, a nicer person.
He is. Yeah, he's very...
would want to give people their time and do and be polite, and was like that more in real life.
He was. He'd look you right in the eye. He'd talk to people. Yeah. He was very kind. I actually got to introduce my parents to him one time, and they remembered it forever. You knew about many affairs. We don't know about all of them, do we? No, and I don't know about all of them. I just certainly know about... But this is the Oval Office. This is the President of the United States. Isn't that a national security threat? Yeah, I would think it is. I mean, my question was at the time when I was being forced to testify and being... And you didn't want to testify? No, I never wanted to talk about this at all. Never. And I know that sounds silly now because I'm coming out, but clearly I've walked through some door where I think it's time and it's important to do. How many women do you know for sure he had affairs with in the Oval Office? In the White House complex, I'd say easily 3, maybe 4 that I know of. And you saw Monica Lewinsky a mile away? Sure. You knew she wanted to be near him? She was certainly manipulating some of the staff, myself, other officers and agents to find out where the president was. So she wasn't manipulating if you saw through it. Well, yeah, I agree, but I mean, I saw through it right away. She was trying to place herself in his path when he would move around the complex. Now, you never actually saw them together? No. Well, not alone. Not alone. All right, but you did see, you walked into the map room, I believe, and you did see... Actually, I'm sorry, that's not correct. I did see them alone. You did see them alone? Yes. And what did you see? Well, there was an incident one time where during their affair, she showed up on a Saturday to said she had to deliver something to the president.
Was that the Saturday?
Yes.
During the shutdown?
No, this was before that.
Okay.
I mean, I'm sorry, this was after that. This was after that, and she showed up on a Saturday under the pretense of delivering some newspapers or something, which she already had copies of. The staff wasn't in yet because it was Saturday.
Right.
And so I blew her off. I told her to leave, and about 5 minutes later, the Oval Office door opened up, and the president said,
Somebody come by?
Yeah, if somebody tried to deliver something to me, and I looked at the agent, and he's like, and after the president closed the door, he said, I told you, Gary, stay out of it. Don't stop trying to stop her. You know,
Wow.
you don't know what goes on out on the road. So
out on the road. So in other words, he was telling you that this is nothing.
right, that was yes, exactly. That's what he was telling me.
So you knew that something was going on there,
Right.
but you actually walked into the map room and saw the president with former presidential candidate Vice President Mondale.
Yeah.
And
With
his daughter.
Yeah, with his daughter. Yeah, so I stopped by on the way from the East Wing to the West Wing to say hi to a friend, and one of the Navy stewards walked up with a shirt for the president, and the president was waiting in the map room for him, and the steward opened the door to walk in the map room, and he was looking back at us and not into the room. And when he opened the door, the president was standing there with Eleanor Mondale, and they were like teenagers, you know, standing up, locked, making out, and they didn't even look up at us. They never saw us.
You knowingly had a situation where, how do I say this delicately, you got rid of evidence. Let's put it that way.
I did.
But it wasn't subpoenaed. It was not illegal what you did.
Right. This was before we knew there was an investigation going on. And I was trying to help the president. I was trying to protect him from more scandal and embarrassment. And the steward came up with some towels that had lipstick on them, and then another time with stuff that is, you know,
Bodily fluids?
From a male, yes, and thank you. And
I'm trying to help you out here. But, I'm trying to help my TV audience out here more.
Yeah, I'm trying to keep it PG.
Yeah.
So, so the steward was highly distraught over this, and he complained that it had happened before. So I took a plastic bag and I had him throw the towels in there. And
I think it's a little unfair to leave that for somebody else, don't you?
Yeah, but based on what I've seen before, they don't think about that. They just do whatever they want to do.
Was it common knowledge this president was doing all this? Did you think she knew, Hillary?
I do now. I mean, I can't tell you when I decided that she knew and accepted it, and that was the way it was, and then once in a while she'd blow up over it. But like when the Monica story came out, my feeling at the time was that she wasn't upset about the breach of their marriage. She was upset because he dented the Clinton brand again. He made them look bad again. Yeah,
and so it was more about image again.
That's
But when you've heard those stories of Kathleen Willey, Paula Jones, Juanita Broderick.
Yeah, yeah. Well, you know, after I saw their stories, after I had worked there for a while, I will tell you that my gut feeling is they're all telling the truth. I mean, you can't act like that. I mean, he's been acting like that his whole life. And I do believe, especially Kathleen.
But if everybody, how did he possibly keep it contained? Did he not know that as the president?
He doesn't, and he doesn't seem to care. He just keeps behaving in that odd, it's like a vicious cycle.
And welcome back to Hannity as we continue now with former Secret Service officer Gary Byrne, his explosive new book, Crisis of Character. You didn't finish the story about the vase, because that morning he came down after that vase was broken, and he had a black eye, like a big black eye.
Sure. So after the incident, when he came, the next time I saw him in the Oval Office, he had a mark under his eye. You could see they were trying to hide it with makeup. And when I walked in,
obviously not.
Yeah, no. And I walked into the secretary's office, and I said, what happened to the president? He's got a mark under his eye. And his assistant, Nancy Herrenreich, said, oh, that's he's allergic to coffee. And I said, under one eye? I don't understand that.
Yeah, that doesn't make sense.
Right.
But there was really a crisis. The Secret Service had to decide whether or not his own wife was a physical threat to the president.
Right. It was
How big an issue was that?
It was a concern. I've discussed it with other officers at the time and agents. What do you do about a domestic dispute? What if the president?
And what was the answer?
Each situation is different. You know, you have to protect the president, the protectee, and you have to protect the first lady. But you know, if he gets caught with some woman and she goes ballistic, then what happens?
So you were the door. You were like the doorkeeper.
Pretty much.
You were the guy in front of the Oval Office door.
Yeah.
If somebody got in to see the president, they had to go through you.
Pretty much.
Okay.
Me or the other. There were 6 officers.
How often would you know that that person was there for another reason, to be with the president in a romantic way?
So the way it worked would be like if I came up and relieved somebody on post, the officer that I'm relieving is going to say, hey, you know, he's in there with Lewinsky or whoever, and you know, they've been in there a while. Just a heads up. So it wasn't like we were gossiping. You have to pass this stuff on. Right. You don't want to blindside your coworker. So you always pass this information on. And we were concerned. I mean, what if she did catch the president in a compromising situation?
But you had a plan for that. Wherever Hillary was, you guys were communicating if she was headed down, and then you'd have to go warn him.
Well, I never actually warned them, but yes, that was the plan. Like, yeah, that was
a plan. You had a plan in place, basically.
Yes.
I mean, that's all right. Let me play. I pointed out on this program and on my radio program that she's often angry.
Yes.
Somebody you're describing with a volcanic temper.
Yes.
Let's play some of Hillary.
And I also think we'd be a lot better off if we actually talked to each other instead of yelling at each other.
I'm so sick. I am so sick of the Sanders campaign lying about me. I'm sick of it.
I think it's time we treated everybody in this country with respect, with kindness, with love.
I know we can create more good-paying jobs and raise incomes for hardworking Americans again. I know that we can finish the job of universal health care coverage for every single man, woman, and child. I know we can combat climate change and be the clean energy superpower of the 21st century. I know we can make college affordable and get student debt off the backs of young people.
She does seem angry a lot.
Right.
And you're saying behind closed doors when nobody's looking, she's that angry person always. Mostly.
Or distant, cold. What I've been looking at there, Sean, doesn't concern me too much. That's her being a politician. The kind of anger I'm talking about is where she just almost can't even complete a sentence. She starts yelling, screaming, cussing. You know, I talked in the book how she...
By the way, mistreating people in their positions.
Sure.
All the time.
Yes, the uniformed division officers, agents.
So this is like you're describing a phony, fake, fraudulent human being.
Absolutely.
All right, let me give you an example. This is Hillary, you know, saying she remembers landing under sniper fire when she went to Bosnia. This is what she said.
I remember landing under sniper fire. There was supposed to be some kind of a greeting ceremony at the airport, but instead we just ran with our heads down to get into the vehicles to get to our base.
Great image making, but here's the problem. We have the real video, and this is it. This is Hillary arriving not under sniper fire, but she walks up to a group of young girls who give her flowers and give her gifts. That's not exactly sniper fire. So is that the person that you're trying to warn America about?
Yes.
Explain. In other words, she sits with an interview with Bill. You think they're the happiest couple together. The light goes off. She hates him.
Right. I don't know if she hates him or not, but I will tell you that the example you just showed there is a perfect example of anybody that worked around them in the Secret Service. When they saw that, they knew they started laughing their faces off because they knew that was a flat-out lie. Wow. Now, I wasn't on that mission, but I talked to the guys that were, and the only thing that the military had them do is sit on their flak vests as they were getting close to the ground, which is standard procedure in those. But when she made the claim that they were under sniper fire, I knew it was a lie.
I want to go back to where we started. You feel compelled to do this.
I do.
You never signed a non-disclosure. You have the right to do it. Some people wish you didn't do it because of the position you're in. Now guys do have to sign non-disclosures.
They do, starting in, I believe, 2004.
Okay. What is it, the final question, what do you want people to know what you saw in their years as president?
Well, first thing I'd like you to know is I'm not comfortable about talking about this, but I feel so strongly that people need to know the real Hillary Clinton and how dangerous she is in her behavior. She is not a leader. She is not a leader.
She doesn't have the temperament for the job.
She doesn't have the temperament. She didn't have the temperament to handle the social office when she was First Lady. She does not have the temperament.
She's dishonest. She's
dishonest. She habitually lies. Anybody that, you know, can separate themselves from their politics and review her behavior over the last 15 years.
You're going to be accused of this being political.
I'm sure I will be. I have been already.
And what's your answer?
It's not. It's got nothing to do with politics.
Is it a love of country?
It is love of country, and I hope someday that it does make a difference. I mean, if Mrs. Clinton ends up being the President of the United States, then she's our President and she's the Commander-in-Chief, and it is what it is. But if she did become the President without me speaking the truth, I'm not sure I could deal with that. People need to know this is serious, and her behavior is appalling, and she's two different people.
All right, Gary Byrne, thank you for being with us.
Sean,
appreciate
thank you.
it.
I appreciate your time.
Thank you so much. Thanks for telling your story.